We're here today with Børge Brende, who has just returned from Zambia, where he's had an opportunity to engage with the U.S. delegation led by Vice President Kamala Harris. Børge, can you tell us a little bit more about what it was like being in Zambia and what the agenda was for the World Economic Forum at the event?
Well, thank you so much. It was quite historic to be in Lusaka with Vice President Kamala Harris. She cares a lot about Africa. She had a long visit there. And on Saturday, we were really underlining the importance of Africa leapfrogging when it comes to the digital connections and the digital opportunities that are out there.
Excellent. And so what were the specific sorts of digital opportunities that the U.S. is looking at for Zambia?
So it was a broader African approach, but based, of course, then in Zambia. We know that far too many Africans are not properly connected digitally. It's not necessarily a question of infrastructure, but it can be price, it can be access to the devices, but it's also, of course, the price, but as I mentioned, but also that they don't necessarily have the knowledge on how to use it when it comes to using digitally access to bank accounts, but also health and education. So we were looking at how we can make sure that we make huge progress in the years to come. So hundreds of millions of Africans that are not connected today can be connected in the right way moving forward.
Now, electricity is also a concern, in particular in a country like South Africa, which for many years had excellent access to electricity, but now is experiencing rolling blackouts. Was the topic of electricity and access to power also one of the conversations taking place?
Definitely, and we know that there is a lot of energy poverty in Africa. The situation in Zambia is not as dire as in South Africa with Eskom. They have a lot of hydro themselves and also huge hydro potential, but there are also challenges in Zambia. So what I launched there on behalf of the World Economic Forum was also how we can support both on the electricity side, but in this context through the Edison initiative, how we can make sure that 1 billion people all over the world get digitally connected by 2025. And we already have been able to reach out to 360 million people, many of them Africans, and we are looking at how we can scale up this in Africa, and we're looking now at reaching out to 3 additional countries with this Edison initiative, and that was highly appreciated.
So please tell us a little bit more about the Edison project. How long has it been around, and what countries does it focus on, and specifically, what does it do?
So the Edison initiative was initiated around 5 years ago. It is a public-private partnership where we have the leading companies in the world, the big ones, committing to support governments in how to accelerate digital access in a competitive way when it comes to price, but also having the right devices available. And our goal is by 2025 to connect 1 billion people. So far, we have been able to reach around 360 million, many of them in Africa. And we have done great projects already, in Africa. We have lighthouse projects in Rwanda and some other countries. And now we're going to reach out to 3 new countries on top of this.
And so for the Edison, which also is called the Alliance, if I understand it, the companies and different public-private partners that play a role in it, is also concerned, I think, about sustainability, and how does sustainability play into the way in which the Alliance is implementing its work all throughout the world?
Sustainability is core in this, making sure that we also factor in environment, but also how it is affecting nature. But for us, we also see that a lot of young people and also women are not connected, and that's some part of it is lack of infrastructure, but a lot of it is pricing, so we need more competition and also real access digitally. And we see the big potential in health. We also see it in education, but also in the financial sector, where some of the countries like Kenya that have been very successful, millions of people now have their own bank account. That is a big door opener when it comes to also creating jobs and prosperity.
Do you see, given where you sit at the World Economic Forum, you have the unique perspective to be able to see the world, not just Africa. And I know that the Edison Alliance is operating in many parts of the world, including South Asia. Can you give us any sense of how you might compare the challenges in Africa versus the challenges in, say, South Asia or any other part of the world that you might want to use as a benchmark?
We know that Africa is the youngest continent in the world. In Zambia, the median age is like 19 years old. That is a huge opportunity when it comes to all the jobs that are going to be created when it comes to digital in the future, e-commerce, digital trade, but also when it comes to artificial intelligence, really creating new companies that can really be successful in the future. But one prerequisite for this, also for the young people in Africa, is that you have reliable internet, that it is accessible, but also that it is cost effective, because many places in Africa today, the prices are much higher than, for example, in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And here, we really need to look at bottlenecks related to the pricing and competition. And I think the private sector here can also take on more responsibilities, because many governments are so indebted. And after COVID, after the war in Ukraine, there is not that much of a fiscal muscle left in these countries. So we have to think out of the box, and the prerequisite for leapfrogging is digital connectivity.
You talk a lot about health. I can imagine maybe telehealth. Are there any specific case studies that you can point to as to how connectivity has a positive impact on health?
We know that many rural areas in Africa don't have access to the right kind of healthcare and also doctors. And it is a revolution if you then can use digital tools to then connect with your doctor or your the right healthcare worker. And we know that this has saved lives. It's also very cost effective. We saw it during COVID, how it revolutionized the way we did education. Many areas in Africa do have schools. They also have teachers, but the quality is not at the level you wanted. So you can then supplement the traditional education with having access to teaching from all over the world. So you can have the best teachers at the best schools and universities in the world teaching also in the African continent where they don't have the right access. I think this is going to change the educational industry in a dramatic way, also to the benefit of many areas that don't have that kind of access today. But then, of course, the young people have to have the right gadgets. They also have to the right devices. It has also to be the cost of having that digital access has to go dramatically down. We know in many countries in the world, it's almost zero cost related to using it. In Africa, the cost is still in many countries far too high. We know, for example, in India, the cost has gone down dramatically to like 1-2% of what it was like 5 years ago. That hasn't in the same way happened in Africa. There we hope that the Edison Initiative, but also Vice President Kamala Harris' commitment to the digital transformation in Africa is crucial, because the US is the largest economy in the world, and many of the big tech companies do have also their headquarters in the US.
So you've talked about how the digital connectivity has an impact in health. Can you also talk through how digital connectivity has an impact in the education sector?
So education today is the most important part if you want to move from being a poor country, a developing country, into becoming a middle-income country. And the access to quality teachers and also quality universities will change. One of the fastest growing industries of the world today is the educational industry. That is the educational industry based also on digital access. You can teach people by Zoom. You can also have digital classes. And for many places, for example, in Africa, this is a positive revolution. And you can also teach teachers to become better teachers through these tools. So I think that there will be an educational revolution moving forward. We only see the tip of the iceberg, and I think this is going to be very, very beneficial for Africa. But then, of course, the access to the internet and also access digitally is very important. It's really a prerequisite for this happening.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Teresa Clarke with Africa.com. We've just had an opportunity to hear from Børge Brende, president of the World Economic Forum, who has just returned from Zambia, where he was working with Vice President Kamala Harris of the United States on bridging the digital divide. Thank you very much for taking the time to share your insights with us today, Børge.
Thank you for inviting me.